Have you been burned by Pioneer, let down by Legacy, cast out of Commander, or maybe just feeling all around meh about Modern? Well, then why aren't you playing Pauper? Well, you're not playing Pauper. I know you're not playing Pauper. So maybe you've got your sights set on Standard instead of Pauper for some reason. Well, all right then, buckle up, because we're doing Standard, but I don't want to spend more than $20. And have I got a deck for you. Boros Auras. For only $20, you can put this deck together, and the upgrade options are just Sacred Foundry in the mana base, so we're not dealing with watered down weakness, we're dealing with a deck that's powerful, fun, and you can play to win. Let's take a look. Boros Auras is a kind of old-fashioned Bogles-style deck, but unlike normal Bogles, we don't have hexproof. So instead, we're going to look for other ways to protect our giant creatures, as well as ways to recur our auras to take another swing for the fences. As we tend to do in decks like these, we want an opening hand with a good mix of threats, auras, and protection, so remember, the mulligan is your friend. And one card or even two down won't hurt you as bad as that shaky keep will. Let's start with our great threats. The first card to talk about is a workhorse in the deck, All-Seed of Life's Bounty. It's a 1-mana enchantment 1/1 with lifelink, and for 1 mana of any color, we can sack it to give a creature we control protection of any color until the end of turn. So this little lovely can save any big beefy creature from any removal as long as we have that 1 mana open. And on top of it all, it has lifelink, so if we do build them up, we can easily win any race with a giant life linker. Now for our biggest hitter in the deck, and the card I've been drawn to since its printing, Swiftblade Vindicator. This might look like a 1/1 for 2 mana, but it comes with an overloaded double strike, vigilance, and trample. They were just begging to have auras stacked on it, weren't they? We generally are going to want to stack the Vindicator as big as we can while keeping it protected. Thankfully, there's a lot of mono red in the format, which means that if we can get any creature to 4 toughness, it should be safe in the matchup. Just make sure that you only cast this card if you know you can protect it, or if you're positive your opponent is unable to answer it. Our secondary beater is 10th District Legionnaire. This 2-drop has haste and a variation of heroic, so anytime we target them with any aura, we will get a bonus +1/+1 counter, as well as some very important card selection with Scry 1. This is a great creature that gets out of hand quickly, and while easier to block than the Vindicator, the Legionnaire makes up for it by shoving unwanted cards to the bottom of our library. When all seems lost and our board has been wiped, or our enchanted creature dealt with, where do we turn? Why, to the Storm Herald, of course. For a low-cost 3 mana, we get a 3/2 Hasty Body that will put all auras in our yard back into play, attached however we like amongst our creatures. Just when our opponents think they stabilized, boom! They forgot about the storm, and all the auras we just lost rumble back onto our 3/2 for a last swing for the fences. We're actually going to round out our threats with a creature that we're not looking to enchant on at all, and that's Haktos the Unscarred, who is a 4-mana 6/1 who will randomly generate a number between 2, 3, or 4, and has protection from everything except the chosen mana cost. He doesn't exactly fit with the same aura strategy of the deck, but sometimes he rolls a number your opponent can't deal with and just gets to get in for 6 damage a turn as your opponent is left to ponder what even costs 4. Now that we have bodies to suit up, let's suit them up with lots of auras. Some of the auras we use have the new escape mechanic so that we can get multiple uses out of them if the worst happens. Sentinel's Eyes gives our creature +1/+1 in vigilance for just a single white and can escape for just 2 cards in our graveyard. Just try to leave as many auras as you can when escaping so our Storm Heralds can bring back more later in the game. We also run 3 copies of Escape Velocity, which gives +1/+0 and haste. The haste allows for some explosive Vindicator plays in the mid-game where we might end up playing, suiting up, and swinging in with a Vindicator all in one turn. All That Glitters is the best aura in the deck, and a card we often want to see. For 2 mana, we give +1/+1 for each enchantment we control. Since Alcide is an enchantment creature, it will count to how big our glittering creature will be. This aura gives us the biggest potential for a double power toughness boost. Since we need evasion when we don't have trample from Vindicator, we're also going to play 3 copies of Angelic Gift. For 2 mana, we gain flying, which is a classic means of evasion, but perhaps not all that stellar. However, it also is going to draw us a replacement card, and if we target Legionnaire, we get to scry before the draw to make sure the auras keep rolling. There's definitely value there. Now with mono red running rampant, we'll need some life to keep us in the race. So we're going to include 2 copies of Sentinel's Mask to give us a slight power toughness boost, along with Vigilance and, yes, lifelink for a turn. It has flash, but if we flash it in, we don't get the lifelink. There are obviously going to be some situations where it's important to flash this card in to perhaps save from a shock or a stomp, but normally I suggest that you pay attention to play it for Addendum to get that sweet, sweet lifelink. The next aura we're running is Impending Doom. For 3 mana, we get +3/+3 and must attack, but if the enchanted creature dies, we take 3 damage. While yes, this is a bit of a double-edged sword, we still play this because that power toughness boost is so much of what we need. And the way this deck operates, we were going to probably be swinging in every turn anyway. So ultimately, there's not really a better deal for our mana, and the downsides are worth the massive stat boost that this card gives us. Alright, now it's time to talk about one of the most important cards in the deck. And while it's not an aura, it's more important than even all that glitters, and that is Karametra's Blessing. This 1 mana white instant gives any creature +2/+2 until end of turn. Not bad, but wait, there's more. If that creature is enchanted or is an enchantment, then it gains indestructible and hexproof until end of turn. Chef's kiss. With this in our hand and 1 open white mana, we can save our creature from anything and everything. Now we will need to resolve the first aura before this card turns on, but once we land any of our 1 or 2 mana auras, we're gonna have the safest creature ever. Honestly, this is a card to keep your eye on for a possible Pauper play as well as Pioneer. But as far as this deck goes, Blessing is a card we often want in our hand, and drawing 2 of it will generally spell the end of our opponents. But all of this is irrelevant without lands to cast these sweet auras, so let's take a quick look at the mana base. Thankfully, standard mana bases are relatively cheap right now, as a set of Temple of Triumph is at only $1 each. And the only expensive upgrade I would suggest, as mentioned at the start, is Sacred Foundry. But you know what? Windscarred Crag is at only 25 cents, and it's a fine substitute. Now, Castle Ardenvale is a one-of land that can give us value if we flood out. And so it's actually going to be, I think, one of the most expensive cards in the deck at, wow, almost $3. So listen, if that breaks the bank for you, then skip that addition. And just add another Plains instead. But if you've got the castle in your collection, yeah, 7 plains, 4 mountains, and the castle to round out this deck. So what's our sideboard look like? Well, main deck is lacking on removal, so first things first, let's pack some removal for the decks that have creatures we would be better off answering. And that means 2 copies of Shock and 3 copies of Lava Coil to help us answer all sorts of creatures. And Lava Coil even helps remove tricky threats like Cauldron Familiar and Annex, while Shock helps slow cards like Gilded Goose and Runaway Steam Kin, so our opponents can't run away with the game. Against the more mid-range green decks, we will want to avoid losing fights and need to tap down the bigger creatures, so we bring in 3 copies of Glaring Aegis, an enchantment that not only gives us some power and a lot of toughness, but will hold down a blocker for a crucial moment for us to push in for damage. 2 copies of Devout Decree helps us add removal to matchups against the many black and red decks, especially those that plan to use the graveyard by exiling Kroxa or many of the other recursive threats, or even by answering what is possibly this deck's greatest enemy, Priest of Forgotten Gods, as that black 2-drop will threaten to make us sack a creature, and we can't really protect from a sack effect. So we need to make sure that this repeatable edict can be answered in as many ways as possible. A single copy of Fry lets us cover matchups with another Hoser against the blue-white Planeswalker-based decks. And we round out the board with 2 copies of Chance for Glory. Against Control, this card makes a tap-out turn into a death sentence, and occasionally it's a way to save our board from a Kaya's Wrath or a Shatter the Sky, and then swing in next turn for the win. Remember, with our explosive threats, usually one more swing is 10 to 16 damage easy. So Standard is a very powerful and balanced format at the moment, and due to the popularity of Pioneer and Modern, and a flood of collector's products, the format is actually quite cheap. So call your local game store and see what you and your housemates can shove together for about $20 in singles, and then go get some battles in while keeping your local game stores in business during these tough times. When things clear up, this deck should be poised to take down our hopeful return to Friday Night Magics, and that's a sight I'm sure all of us are looking forward to seeing. Special thanks to this episode's professional consultant, Ricky Lynn. If you'd like to check out more from Ricky, his Pioneer podcast is available, linked in this video's description, as well as thanks to our editor, Patrick Lickman, and of course, the continued support from all of you. So thank you. Is a power greater than that of my students, Jace, Chandra, Liliana, Gideon, and the other one. What is your counsel and advice?
Have you considered mech suits for the Planeswalkers to wear?
What, like Gundams?
No, Urza made these giant robot suits for the Planeswalkers to wear. They fired missiles and had bombs!
You are literally describing Gundams. We are not fighting Nicol Bolas in Gundams.